Hola a todos! Let's go through some of the key vocabulary you need to know for the jobs and work topic for GCSE Spanish, along with how to use the future tenses. This covers Theme 1, Topic 3 for AQA, but this video is also applicable to other exam boards. This is part of my topic summary series, and you can see previous episodes on this channel. Vamos! Okay, let's start off with the part-time jobs topic and talk about having un trabajo a tiempo parcial, which is how we say a part-time job. So the key question here could be ¿Tienes un trabajo parcial? Sorry, un trabajo a tiempo parcial. So do you have a part-time job? ¿Tienes un trabajo, which is just like a work or job, a tiempo, which is saying specifically part-time, a tiempo parcial. A tiempo completo would be a full-time job, a tiempo parcial is a part-time job. So, tiempo parcial, question mark. Good. Let's say yes, we do. So I could say sí by saying yes and talk about different examples. One of which could be you work as a cashier. So trabajo de cajero. For example, en un supermercado, trabajo de cajero. If you're a girl, we would say cajera, the feminine sort of job. Good. Next, we've got maybe as a volunteer. So trabajo como, which is how we say I work as or I work like. Trabajo como. I could say voluntario, a volunteer, voluntario or voluntaria. Muy bien. Then you could say maybe your dog walker, sorry. So pasear is to walk the dog. Pasear al perro. You might have seen that in the sort of chores topic early on. So I could say soy paseador or paseadora de perros. I am a walker of dogs. Soy paseador de perros. Good. Then on the flip side, we could say no, we don't have a part-time job, and we give some reasons why. It's never good enough to just say no. They want the examiner wants to know sort of why. You've got to develop your answer. So it's sometimes easier to say yes and make something up because you've got more things to say. But on the flip side, you can say no, but just make sure you give a reason or you say something more than just saying no. So I could say no because my parents don't let me. So no, mis padres, my parents, no me dejan. They don't let me. No me dejan. Dejar is that AR verb here, dejar, which is has a few meanings. One of which is to allow something to happen or to let something happen, but you've also got like to drop or to quit. Dejar's got a few meanings there. So no mis padres no me dejan. Then I could say maybe personally I prefer to work on my studies or to focus on my studies. So I could say no prefiero. So no comma, the reason why I'm saying prefiero enfocarme, to focus, enfocarme en mis estudios, in my studies, en mis estudios. That could be a perfectly valid reason for maybe you don't have a part-time job. Good. Then we might as well talk about house chores because that might count as a part-time job even if you're not getting paid, but maybe you are. I could say en casa, talk about helping at home. So en casa, things you do. Paso la aspiradora. Do we know what this means? Paso la aspiradora. The vacuum cleaner. You do the vacuuming. You do the hoovering. Paso la aspiradora. Good. Then I could say maybe also I do something else. I clean the dishes. Lavo. So to wash, lavo los platos. Lavo los platos. To clean would be the verb limpiar. If you wanted to say maybe you clean the dishes or you clean your room, you could say limpiar. Something else we can do is plancho la ropa. So plancho is saying ironing. Plancho, like that. Plancho la ropa. I iron the clothes. We could say how often we do something. So maybe a veces, only sometimes. I could say maybe an advantage of some of these part-time jobs. So una ventaja is how we say advantage. Una ventaja es que. An advantage is that it helps me do something. Me ayuda a hacer, maybe these chores help you to become more independent. Me ayuda a hacer más independiente. Independent. Or I could say es que gano mucho dinero. I earn a lot of money maybe. There's different reasons we do these chores or we have part-time jobs as well. So that's the part-time jobs topic. A lot of the sort of examples there, some of the main examples. Learn some of them that you can talk about so you can answer the question in your maybe speaking exam or your writing exam. ¿Tienes un trabajo a tiempo parcial? Good. Now we can move on to jobs as a whole, sort of full-time jobs. There's lots of job vocabulary here, lots of different types of jobs. For example, firefighter, cleaner, nurse, doctor, etc. Teacher, lots of jobs. We're going to go through some, as many as we can actually, and talk about what jobs you might want to do and talk about what involves or what we can say in terms of, like, for example, if I'm a waiter, I serve clients, how to say what you do as part of your job and how to say what you are, what job you have. So starting off with lawyer, let's go in alphabetical order. So abogado is lawyer. If you're a girl, abogada. A flight attendant, azafato, or azafata, like cabin crew in a plane, flight attendant. Then we've got firefighter, like the word bombero. A lot of jobs you'll notice do end in these letters ERO, and we'll see this again later on. But bombero or bombera is a firefighter. A waiter or waitress, all of you should know this one. Camarero is quite a common one for the role play. Camarero or camarera. Then we've got a chef, cocinero, again ending in ero, like the ones above, or cocinera. Then we've got contable, which is not one as part of your specification, contable. This means accountant. I'm going to put a star next to it because it's quite a tricky one. Contable means accountant, not one that you do need to know for your specification, but it's good to know anyway. Cirujano is how we say surgeon. Cirujano or cirujana. Good. Then on the next side, I can say a shop assistant or some sort of a retail assistant. Dependiente. Dependiente. Then we've got enfermero, a nurse, enfermero, again ending in those ERO letters. Granjero is a farmer. Next one, granjero or granjera. We need to think about the word una granja, which is the noun for a farm. So similarly to that, granjero is a farmer. Then we've got one I think all of you know, médico. What does médico mean or médica? A doctor. Looks like medic sort of just means a doctor. There is no really other way of saying doctor. This is the main word that we use in Spanish to say doctor, médico. Couple more, periodista. Periodista. This is a not journalist, perfect, exactly, a journalist, because you've got the word for newspaper, which is periódico. So for example, you could say, if going back to part-time jobs, if you hand out newspapers, reparto, I dish out, or I deliver reparto periódicos, saying sort of as a paper boy, you give out newspapers. Periodista is the word for journalist. Then we've got piloto, pilot, or pilota, piloto and pilota. And lastly, let's do teacher, the one that all of you would know, hopefully, profesor and or profesora. The bracket is saying if it's a family and you say profesora, you keep the O up, you add the end at the A at the end, sorry. But if it's piloto, we get rid of the O and just keep the A. If you're saying, for example, a female pilot, pilota. Good. That there is a list of jobs. Let's move this on the side so we can put some sentences next to it and talk about actually putting these in sentences. So, I am a certain job. We say soy. For example, soy profesor. I am a teacher. Soy profesor. You could say in the future tense, we'll look at this later on, but I'm going to be voy a ser. Maybe voy a ser bombero or bombera. I'm going to be a firefighter. We can say he or she is. We still using that verb ser. We don't use estar to describe your occupation. We use ser. Go back to an earlier video where I spoke about doctor and place, the differences between ser and estar. So I could say maybe mi madre es médica. My mother is a doctor. And we use the verb es there from the verb ser. Good. One thing you're going to notice here is in all of these gaps, we're not saying a doctor. We don't say un or una when we're saying between ser and the job. If I say I'm a very good doctor, then I could say I am un médico muy bueno. That's the example where we might say uno, una, the article there. But generally, if we're just saying in simple language, I am this job, we don't say I am a teacher, we just say I am teacher. Soy profesor. So we're missing the word un there. We don't say una, in these sorts of sentences where we're saying between ser and the job, unless we're going to say a specific attribute. For example, I am the best doctor, or I am a very good doctor, or I am a hardworking doctor, because then we're specifying the type of doctor we are by saying the adjective. But generally, we don't say the article there. So I'm going to make a note of that. We don't use un or una between ser and the job. Muy bien. Okay, we've got a bit of space. Let's talk about what we do as part of our job. So, for example, the example I gave about camarero being a waiter, suelo, I usually do something, suelo. In the present tense, it means I usually plus the infinitive. So maybe servir, comida, y I could say bebida. So I usually serve food and drink. Suelo servir comida y bebida. Something else we might say that we can do is traveling around the world. If, for example, you're a flight attendant, so maybe suelo viajar por todo el mundo, around the entire world. Suelo viajar por todo el mundo. Something else I can say, bombero, maybe a firefighter sort of gets rid of fires or extinguishes fires. We can say apagar, which is that verb to switch off. I could say apagar like las luces, to turn off the lights. I could say apagar incendios, which is fires. Apagar incendios, to sort of switch off or to put out fires. So that covers the jobs topic. We've got lots of jobs that we can talk about and talk about maybe in the future tense. I want to be a certain job title. In the exam, my advice is to pick a job that's easy to talk about. Professor, médico, camarero. Don't pick something like archaeologist because you need to be able to describe maybe what you do in that job, and the vocab will get very tricky when you go to that extent. So pick jobs that are easy. You don't get marks for uniqueness or creativity. So pick an easy job, médico, something that you can talk about and say what you do. For example, ayudar a los clientes or ayudar a los pacientes, the patients, etc. Good. Now let's move on to the dream job before we sort of link this into the grammar of talking about the future tense. We've got three future tenses. We've got the conditional tense, the simple future, and the near future. We'll talk about all three in just a second. But first, your dream job. The question you might be asked, for example, in the speaking exam, is ¿Cuál sería tu trabajo ideal? We're saying, what would be your ideal job? ¿Cuál sería tu trabajo ideal? Ideal is spelled like ideal, but it's pronounced ideal. The tense here, if I make it super clear what I've written here, is sería. Do we all know what tense sería is in? This verb is indeed from ser, to be. What tense is it in? I've translated it as would be. That's your conditional tense. Good. Make sure we're familiar with tenses, and I'll talk about that now anyway. But your conditional tense, something that would happen. For example, compraría, I would buy. The endings for the conditional tense look like this. So we've got our normal chart, I, you, he, she, we, you guys, they. The conditional tense endings are the same for AR verbs, ER verbs, and IR verbs. They go as follow. Ia, for example, compraría, we keep the full infinitive and then we say ia, the ending. I would buy. Compraría. Comprarías, you would buy. Again, compraría, he, she, or usted, the formal version, would buy. Compraríamos, we would buy. Compraríais, you guys would buy. And lastly, comprarían, they would buy. So just to recap there, we keep the full infinitive. So for example, like comprar is your infinitive, plus the ending equals how to form the conditional tense. Okay, so that's how we form the conditional tense and how we can use that sort of vocab or the grammar to talk about your future job. So what your ideal job would be. Let's do an example in the space here. So I could say, for example, por ejemplo, in Spanish, por ejemplo, cuando sea mayor, so in the subjunctive, we're saying when I am older. If this is really new to you, don't worry about it for now. You can learn subjunctive later on. Make sure you cover the sort of more easier tenses first, things like your past tense, your present tense, etc., the future tense. But this sea is in the subjunctive. I'm saying when I am older or when I sort of will be older. My ideal job would be cuando sea mayor, mi trabajo. We're using the words in the question. So mi trabajo ideal. So mi trabajo ideal. It would be is going to be the verb sería, the same as I would be. Sería can mean both because the ia ending is the same in the conditional tense for the I form and the he, she form. Sería, let's do profesor. We haven't really spoken about that too much yet today. So sería profesor. Why? Dado que, I can say porque, but I might as well say dado que, just a fancy way of saying because. I want to be a teacher because I like teaching, right? I could say me gusta. Enseñar is that verb to teach. Enseñar. Who do we like to teach? Maybe other people. A los chicos, o a los demás, o a los niños. I'm going to pick the fanciest one there. A los demás is how we say other, like other people. Me gusta enseñar a los demás. And I think, and end of the sentence by using an adjective. Like I think, maybe I've got a specific quality about myself. So pienso que, I would be, maybe sería un profesor. So here I can say un because I'm saying a specific teacher. I'm saying a good teacher. I'm going to say sería un profesor bueno. So just to recap, I've said because I like to teach other people, and I think that I would be a good teacher. I need to say un here, a good teacher, because I am, maybe a patient. I could say porque soy paciente, which I am. So porque soy paciente. Good. That there is going to be my answer, my sort of response to the question, ¿Cuál sería tu trabajo ideal? I've moved all that, but that's okay. For this sort of question, so we're using that future tense, that's conditional sería, and using jobs like profesor and giving reasons by saying paciente and etc. I could say, I like the teachers I've said there, or I could say, Maybe I found the job rewarding. Exigente is demanding. Gratificante is adjective for rewarding. So different adjectives to describe jobs. Okay, let's talk about. So we've done the conditional, super similarly to the conditional tense. We've got the simple future tense. This is just as similar, but we're saying instead of would buy or would do something, it's saying will. So I like to call it the will future tense. I will buy, I will eat, we will go, they will eat, they will dance, anything that will happen. Similar as before, it's the same for AR verbs, ER and IR verbs. We've only got 6 endings to learn, makes it nice and easy for ourselves. The endings are as follows. E with accent, e. For example, comprare, I will buy. Comprare is I will buy. I like using comprar as my example there. Comprare, it's comprar to buy, comprare, I will buy. Comprarás, you will buy. Make sure we note these accents. Accents here are quite important. Comprará, he, she will buy. Compraremos, we will buy. Compraréis is you guys will buy. And lastly, comprarán is they will buy. So I've said compraré is I will buy. I might say, for example, using ser like we did earlier, será, it will be. Can I spell? Yes, that's not how you spell it. It. It will be. Just focus on this ending here. We've got comprare, será, ser plus the infinitive. Again, in this tense, we keep the full infinitive. So the verb, the word that ends in AR, ER, or IR, and we add the ending to it. This is unique to these two tenses. It doesn't happen in basically any other tense apart from your conditional tense and your future or your will future tense. Perfect. Those are my examples there for the will future tense. I could say other verbs like maybe I could use estar, which also means to be. So, for example, estaré. I'm also saying here I will be. This is for sort of temporary things and your location, your place, your action, that sort of thing. Ser generally is going to be more common, especially when we think about the future tense. Anyway, the other future tense that we've got 3 in total. The third one here is the near future tense. This is the one I would expect most of you to be most confident with because it's the one that you're taught sort of in year 9, year 10, that slightly easier one that you might be taught a bit earlier on. How it works is we get the conjugations of ir in the present tense, ir being the verb to go. So I say voy, I go, vas, you go, va, he, she goes, vamos, we go, vais, you guys go, and lastly, van, they go. With this, we add our infinitive. I'll show you what it translated. I'm sure all of you would hopefully know this, but if you don't, here's your time to learn. I could say, for example, voy a comprar. I am going to buy. Just like we say in English, I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something. For example, I am going to go to the park. Voy a ir al parque. Voy a ir al parque. I've got voy a plus the infinitive. It doesn't matter that voy and ir are both the same verb. I go to go. I am going to go. It makes sense. So voy a plus any infinitive. It doesn't matter if it's ir or any other infinitive. Them saying I am going to go. You're not saying I go to go or I go to buy. We're saying I am going. So this word becomes that word going. For example, vas a bailar. You guys, or it should be singular, shouldn't it? You are going to dance. That's how we translate it into English. This is our near future tense. We're describing what is going to happen. Another one, vamos a salir. Have a think about that in your head. What does vamos a salir mean? What is that verb salir? That is irregular in a few tenses, but vamos a salir. We are going to go out. Salir, to go out, like to this club or sort of to leave your house, basically to go out. Vamos a salir. That's how that tense works. Super nice and easy. I'm sure all of you would have seen it before. Okay, let's now jump upwards, talking about applying for jobs, because we sort of skipped the vocabulary there. To talk about things like interviews and those sorts of maybe slightly trickier vocabulary. To talk about applying for jobs. So, the key vocab here is going to be an interview, which is una entrevista. Una entrevista, and just to take note that the verb there is entrevistar. To interview something or someone is entrevistar. Una entrevista is the noun, an interview. Then we've got work experience. There's different ways of saying, but I'm going to say las prácticas laborales, which is how we say work experience. I could say maybe buscar un trabajo, right? Buscar, that verb to look for. Un trabajo. I could say un anuncio, like a job advert. Un anuncio, and almost advertisement de trabajo. A job advert. I could talk about having your CV, which is el curriculum in Spanish, el curriculum, which is basically what CV sort of stands for. The C in there anyway. The verb for to request or to apply for something like a job, solicitar, solicitar maybe. Un solicitud is the noun for an application, so the verb to apply is solicitar basically. El horario is the schedule, like a time schedule. Enviar una carta is send a letter. You can use it to sort of say like a cover letter. And then we've got the skills, las habilidades, which is a pretty useful word actually for saying skills. Generally, holistically speaking, the skills is las habilidades. So those are some of the key nouns and verbs for applying for jobs. For that vocabulary, quite specific vocabulary. Let me put this into a sentence. So for example, por ejemplo, aunque, so something negative, aunque, something, so aunque no se necesito, although it was not necessary, una entrevista, or it was not needed, I should say, una entrevista para mi último trabajo. So although a interview was not needed for my last job, mi último trabajo, I had to, tengo que, I could say in the past, tuve que, or I had to, tuve que enviar mi curriculum. I had to send my CV. Enviar mi, oops, mi curriculum. Accent on that, good. Okay, so although this is the passive voice, no se necesito, although it was not needed in it, although an interview, I should say, was not needed for my last job, I had to send my CV. Tuve que enviar mi curriculum. Good. That is that sort of vocab there. Then future time phrases, I'm going to rush through these because these are all super easy. And I've got other videos talking about these that I'll link somewhere on the screen. Mañana, let's do a bit of a vocab test. Mañana, what does it mean? It's got two meanings actually. Either the morning or tomorrow. It means two things. Más tarde, what does it mean? Later on, good. Like we're literally saying tarde is kind of the word for evening, is the word for evening, but it can also mean late. So more late is later. Good. El próximo, I could say any day of the week. El próximo lunes, what does it mean? Good. Next, I'm saying next Monday. Literally, el próximo lunes is next Monday. El año que viene, a little bit tricky. I'm going to give you a second long to think about that one. El año que viene. You all would have seen it before, I hope. This que viene is saying it comes. We're saying that the coming week or the following week. Okay? I'm sorry, not in this case week. In this case, year. I'm saying año, aren't I? I'm saying year. I could say la semana que viene, but that would be the feminine noun, la semana. In this case, I've said el año, so the next year, the following year. If you wanted to know, viene comes from the verb venir, which literally means to come. That's the infinitive there. So viene. It comes or coming on the following week. Or in this case, year. Other words like pasado mañana. We know those two words individually. Can we work out what it means together? Pasado mañana. It's saying the day after tomorrow. It's saying past tomorrow. The day after tomorrow. We don't have, obviously a word for that in Spanish. That in English, we say the day after tomorrow. In Spanish, we say, I guess you could say the following day, maybe. In Spanish, we say pasado mañana, the day after tomorrow. Then we've got dentro de, going a bit random here, a bit vogue, but dentro de, like dos semanas. This is a bit less common, but it's still interesting to know what dentro de means. It means within. So in this case, it's used to say like in the next 2 weeks, dentro de dos semanas, but it really means within the next 2 weeks, or within 2 weeks. Then we've got lastly el mes próximo. We've seen próximo earlier. Próximo can go before or after the noun. So next month, in this case, mes means month. And lastly, algún día is saying one day or someday. Algún día, it's any one day in the future. Maybe you could say algún día espero que. One day I hope that, or I hope to do something. I could say maybe algún día espero ser, talking about jobs, espero ser médico. One day I hope to be a doctor. Good. That covers those future time phrases super quickly. Okay, now we've got a few more things to just rattle off. Let's talk about telling the time, some more grammar here. You might have covered this back in like year 7. You might have forgotten how to talk about telling the time. This isn't super important at GCSE, it's honestly not. But you might see it mentioned in like the reading question or a listening question, less so in speaking or writing, but just good vocab to know because it's so basic, isn't it? So, ¿qué hora es? Is how we say what time is it? Literally, what hour is it? ¿Qué hora es? What hour is it? Is how we ask that question, like what time is it? Just say at what time something happens. I could say a qué hora. For example, a qué hora cierra something like la biblioteca. At what time does the library close? Cerrar is to close. Cierra, it closes. So this is how to say at what time, to ask at what time. Okay, I could say ahora es la una. Right now it's 1 o'clock. I could say ahora son las dos. Right now it's 2 o'clock or it's 3 o'clock. Son las tres or son las cuatro, etc., etc., all the way to doce. Ahora son las doce. Right now it's 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. I could say in brackets de la mañana to say in the morning, or de la tarde to say in the evening, so 12 a.m. or p.m. is how we specify that. Es mediodía, I could say es el mediodía, it's the middle of the day. Es el mediodía, it's sort of noon. Okay, to say it's 2:05 p.m. or 2:05, I could say y cinco, that and 5. Son las 2:05. Hopefully this is coming back to you when you would have learned this a couple of years ago back in Key Stage 3. Y cinco is and 5. I could say like y diez. I could say y cuarto, which is that plus 15, a quarter, so and 15 minutes. I could say y media and 30. I could say backwards. I could say menos. Son las dos menos cinco. It is 2, son las dos menos cinco, minus 5. So I'm saying it's 1:55. It's 5 minutes to 2 o'clock. Like we say in English, it's quarter to, it's half to, we'd say quarter to at least. Son las tres menos cuarto. It's 3 o'clock minus 15. It's 2:45. Okay, that's sort of vocab there with time. Super nice and simple. Then, particularly important for all topics, not just jobs in that topic, other people's opinion. We've said, I like to do something. How do we say what other people like to do? We've got to be able to talk about other people. You will get marks for this in the writing exam and in the speaking exam. It's a good habit to talk about, to learn how to talk about other people. Interesting vocab. It makes for developed answers. It's a good sort of thing to mention in your exams. So, 2 ways I like to teach it, 2 things I like to advise you on. Saying the word según, which literally means according to. In that one word, we've got according to, según. So, for example, we've got some examples here. I could say, según mi padre, according to my dad, blah, blah, blah. I might say, es una buena idea. Según mi padre, es una buena idea. I could say anything after this, couldn't I? Según mi padre, es una buena idea montar tu propio negocio. What does that mean? According to my dad, it is a good idea to open, pretty much, montar, to open your own business. I could say lo antes posible, as early as possible, lo antes posible. Según mi padre, es una buena idea montar tu propio negocio lo antes posible. According to my dad, it is a very good idea. It is a good idea to open, montar in this case just means open your own business, negocio, as early as possible, lo antes posible. Something else I could say, maybe according to my aunt, mi tía, not just masculine characters here or masculine people, mi tía, su jefe, according to my aunt, her boss, no es, or I could say, yeah, no es paciente, maybe, excuse me, y su trabajo, so her job, my aunt's job, her job, no es rewarding. The word for rewarding, I mentioned it earlier when I talked about teacher, I said gratificante. No es gratificante, it's not rewarding. Well, stop. Something else, according to my teacher, not just family members, but according to my teacher, según mi profesor, I could say hacer we haven't spoken about this yet. I don't have it planned in the other sections, but apprenticeships, obviously, you can do that post sort of 16, right? After GCSEs or after your A levels. Hacer un aprendizaje, an apprenticeship. Hacer un aprendizaje es una posibilidad. So, according to my teacher, doing, I'm not saying to do, but I'm going to say it translates to doing in English. Doing or not making, because hacer is to do or to make, but in this case, doing an apprenticeship is a possibility. Es una posibilidad. Okay, all of those are using según, according to. Something else a bit simpler, maybe I can say, is someone says that. Mi tía, mi profesor, mi abuelo, mi padre, dice que. My someone says that. And I can go and use the exact same vocab I've used above in the same sort of sentence, in the same way. But instead of saying según, I'm saying my someone says that. Mi tía, mi tío, mi amigo, mi hermano, dice que. From the verb decir, to say or to tell. My someone says that, tells me that. I could say me something, for example, mi abuelo me dice que I can squeeze a me in there to say tells me or just tells in general. Good. We've got a few bits left that are quite short. Okay, learning a language. This I've included as part of the sort of the extension of the education topic. In the last video in the series, I spoke about education and school and homework and exams. This is an extension of that, talking about the future, but I've put learning a language as part of the vocab here. You might get a question like why it's useful to learn a language. So I could say aprender un idioma. So to learn a language or learning a language, aprender un idioma es útil. It's useful, blah, blah, blah. Why? On one hand, it's useful for traveling. Es útil para viajar. Earlier, I said viajar por todo el mundo when I talked about being a flight attendant, traveling all over the world. In this case, I could say, get rid of that, para viajar a otros países, to other countries. Y maybe conocer a otras culturas, to get to know or to learn about. Conocer is like almost to get to know. A otras culturas, to get to know other cultures. Isn't that a nice sentence there? Aprender un idioma es útil para viajar a otros países y conocer a otras culturas. A nice sentence there that answers the question in easy vocabulary that should make sense to you, answering why learning a language is useful. There's other reasons I can say that might be a bit different to that. So para, again, saying in order to is what para means. Para encontrar, to find. Para encontrar un trabajo, maybe. To find a job abroad. Para encontrar un trabajo en el extranjero. To find a job abroad, full stop. Maybe to meet new people, ¿vale? Para conocer a gente nueva, or I can say nueva gente, works both ways. A gente nueva, new people. Maybe, to improve, para mejorar, memory, la memoria. Y las habilidades, what was the word habilidades from earlier in this video? Skills, para mejorar las habilidades de la comunicación, let's say communication, nice and easy, comunicación. So to improve the communication skills, right? Para mejorar las habilidades de comunicación. Those are some of the reasons I could say learning a language is useful, es útil, es importante, etc. Okay, two things left. University, there's some vocab we can say here. So, for example, el título is your degree that you get at the end of university. El título is like sort of that like degree certificate. Yeah, so your degree, el título. I could say, talking about moving out, so mudarse is the reflexive verb to move out. Mudarse, so to move out. I could say you can move out en la residencia, in the sort of student halls, en la residencia de estudiantes. So, for example, cuando sea mayor, or I could say when I go to university, let's do it in a different color. Cuando vaya, in the subjunctive here, not cuando voy, but cuando vaya a la universidad. That's how we say university. Cuando vaya a la universidad, me gustaría mudarme en la residencia de estudiantes. When I go to university, I would like to move out in the sort of halls of students or the residence of students, that's of student accommodation, blah, blah, blah. Other sort of sentence starters when we talk about the future, I could say I've got the intention of, tengo la intención de, or tengo muchas ganas de. Come back to this in a second, but tengo muchas ganas, so it's feminine, de ir a la universidad. I can continue by saying por qué or para qué, so that or for that. Para qué. I could just say por qué, because, answering sort of why does this person have so much enthusiasm. This ganas is saying basically enthusiasm, saying I have the lots of enthusiasm of going to university. And we can continue the sentence and say why. We could also say, use the subjunctive again and say si pudiera, the imperfect subjunctive. Don't worry for the time being if this grammar's not getting in your head. Just learn the sentence for now. Si pudiera, it means if I could. If I could, I would. Si pudiera, iría. I would go to university. A la universidad. Universidad. And I would study, again, the conditional tense that I mentioned earlier on. Y estudiar is your infinitive plus the ending for the I form, estudiaría. Blah, blah, blah. Maybe estudiaría las matemáticas. So If I could, I would go to university and I would study in the conditional tense and say any subject and say why. So we've got some good sentence starters there. We've got some good vocabulary talking about degrees and university and that and moving on, that sort of thing. Good. Last but not least for this entire video is talking about taking a gap year. A lot of a possibility nowadays. A lot of people do this nowadays after before university they take a gap year. Let's talk about vocab for this. So if I could take a gap year, si pudiera, the same structure I used line above, saying if I could go to university, I'm saying if I could, si pudiera, if I could take a gap year, si pudiera tomarme un año sabático. I'm going to slow down for a second and talk about this word sabático. Put a comma here. What English word does sabático look like? What English word does sabático, that adjective, look like? Let me spell it correctly in English. I think it's a double B. A sabbatical is basically just a gap year, right? We're taking some time off. A sabbatical. You might have a sabbatical in your work, like a 6-month off or something. A period of time off. That's the word, a very similar word, sabático, that we use for saying a gap year in Spanish. So, si pudiera, if I could, tomarme is sort of saying, it's taking like myself a gap year. If I could take for myself a gap year, comma, I would. A really good structure to say what you would do. So lots more conditional stuff. I'm not going to go into all of what the meaningful of these are because they're quite similar to the ones above. But for example, viajaría por todo el mundo. I would travel across the entire world or all over the world. I would learn something new. Aprendería, again, the conditional tense. Un nuevo idioma. And just to point out, idioma is a masculine, so it's nuevo, not nueva. I could say I would move, me mudaría a maybe una ciudad grande. So if I could take a gap year, I would move to a big city. Si pudiera tomarme un año sabático, me mudaría a una ciudad grande. Couple more I'm just going to copy from here. Pasaría, I would spend, pasaría más tiempo, maybe con mi familia. Maybe after my exams, if I could take a gap year, I would spend more time with my family. Pasaría más tiempo con mi familia. Con mi familia. And last but not least, we've been going for a while. To wrap this video up, I can say I would sleep a lot. Dormiría. A lot of you might do this. Dormiría mucho. Y no haría nada. And I would do nothing. In this case, we're saying to do using the verb hacer. No haría nada. Some of you might choose to say that. Maybe after my exams, I would do this. Good. That wraps up the entirety of this video talking about jobs, future, and work. If you've liked this video, hit the like button and subscribe for more GCSE Spanish videos. Head to gcsespanish.com where I'm going to make this PDF, this mind map look nice and neat with my, rewrite some of it, make it look nice and neat and put it on my website, gcsespanish.com. You can purchase it for £1 or ask a teacher to purchase it. Use it as sentence builders to revise from. Maybe stick it in your book or something and have it as like a mind map to refer to summarize this topic. I haven't mentioned every single word you need to know, but hopefully I've given you a good overview for the areas that you want to research and be sort of, revise before your writing and your speaking exams. That's it for me. If you want lessons with me or my team, head to asollanguages.com/tutoring. Vale, adios.